Serial killers are amongst the most terrifying people that have ever existed. They're usually very methodical, calculated individuals who often go to great lengths to evade the police. And there have been some serial killers throughout history who have never even been caught. So here's the most mysterious serial killers that have never been explained. We'll start with one of the most famous ones first, the Zodiac Killer. The identity of this person or these people is still not known, despite the case being over 50 years old. The Zodiac Killer was active in Northern California in the late 60s and early 70s. At least 5 murders were definitely his, and maybe as many as 37. The first murder he committed was in December of 1968, and the last one in October of 1970. He earned his name because he sent letters to the police and press detailing his crimes, and sometimes even taunting them. One of his messages read, "This is the start of the Zodiac killings. I have more to come." He also sent a cryptogram to the San Francisco Chronicle that took 2 years for the paper to decipher. It read, "I hope you're having lots of fun trying to catch me. I was just 10 blocks away from you at the time of the shooting. You are on the most exciting chase of your life. I feel so close to you. The end is near." The Zodiac. Despite all the attention the case received, no one knows who it was. Several people have claimed to be the killer over the years, but none of them could be proved beyond reasonable doubt. Arthur Lee Allen was the prime suspect, but even he wasn't sure if he was the killer. When asked by police if he was the Zodiac, he replied, "I don't know what I would say. It could be yes. It could be no." Jack the Ripper has to be one of the most well-known names in serial killer history. This person murdered at least 5 women in London in 1888, cutting their throats and then mutilating their bodies. All the victims were poor women who lived in the slums, which is probably why Jack got away with his crimes for so long. Back then, the police force wasn't exactly well funded, and they had much bigger problems to deal with than a serial killer. As such, they only had a few leads. Mary Kelly, one of the victims' landladies, described a man she saw coming out of Mary's room the night she died. She said, "It was a cold night, and he was shaking like a person with cold feet. He was about 5 feet 6 inches tall, stout-built, dark complexion, curly brown hair, and wore a short jacket and a fancy waistcoat, but this guy was never identified." Other suspects include Prince Albert Victor, Duke of Clarence, and Montague John Druitt. However, both of these men died before the investigation had ended, and so could never be proven guilty. To this day, the mystery of Jack the Ripper continues to fascinate people. In fact, there are around 100 books published every year on the subject. Now we'll return to the present day with another unsolved case, the Zodiac Killer. This person was active in America between 2001 and 2004, working in Michigan, Ohio, and Virginia. The main reason this is a mysterious case is because there is no victim. This is right. The Zodiac Killer was a mysterious person who claimed to have killed 300 people, but no body was ever found. That's why the police struggled to investigate the crime. What evidence they did has suggested that the victims were mostly drug dealers and prostitutes. But other than that, nothing is known. In 2004, a man called Jeffrey Weisheit contacted the police. He said that he knew who the Zodiac was, but he wouldn't tell them unless he received immunity from prosecution. Police agreed, but then Wiseman refused to cooperate. They eventually arrested him for contempt of court, but while he was in prison, Wiseman killed himself. This left the police without a lead, and the case remains unsolved today. Moving back to the past once again, we have Jack the Ripper. But wait, isn't he the same guy as before? Well, surprisingly, yes. There's actually a theory that Jack the Ripper didn't kill just those 5 women in Whitechapel. Some historians believe that the total number of victims was closer to 200. However, most of these deaths went unnoticed. For example, there was the suspicious death of Catherine Eddowes. She was found dead in a yard, with her throat-cut ear missing, but police ruled her death as an accident. Then there's Elizabeth Jackson, who was discovered in a doorway with her throat slit and face mutilated. Even though these deaths were clearly caused by Jack, the authorities didn't link them together until 4 other women had also been killed. This suggests that Jack may have been operating for many years before the police finally noticed. But we'll never know how many lives he ruined. One of the biggest mysteries in Philadelphia history is the death of the boy in the box. In 1957, a man walking his dog in the Fox Chase section of the city came across a small wooden box. When he opened it up, he found the body of a young boy. He had been hit on the head several times and had probably been dead for several days already. The police investigation failed to find out anything, and so the case went cold. The only clue they had was a composite drawing of a man seen with the child shortly before his murder. Over the years, there have been many attempts to identify this individual, but none of them have panned out. In 1963, the FBI created a plaster cast of the boy's face, hoping that someone would recognize it. But despite hundreds of thousands of people seeing the cast, no one came forward with any new information. The police still haven't figured out who killed this boy or why. Finally, a look at the Cleveland torso murderer. This person operated in Ohio during the 1930s, killing at least 13 people. All the victims were poor, homeless people, and they were all strangled to death. What made this case so mysterious was the way that the bodies were left. The torso of each victim was left exposed, but the limbs were missing. This suggested that the killer had used a saw to dismember the corpses, something unheard of at the time. This led some people to believe that the killer was actually a doctor. However, no medical professionals were ever implicated in the crimes. The case went cold after World War II, but in recent years, a man named Richard Ramspeck has been named as the prime suspect. This is based on forensic evidence, but unfortunately, Ramspeck died in 2007, meaning that the case will never be solved. These cases show that serial killers really are some of the most mysterious criminals that exist. They often target the most vulnerable members of society and take great pleasure from evading law enforcement. So hopefully, in the future, all of these cases can be closed and justice can be served. But now, it's time for you to make your voice heard. Which of these serial killers was the most mysterious? Please let us know your thoughts in the comments. And as always, thanks for watching.